Debt and equity, the difference is really important. If you think about it, what is debt, what is equity? Go back to basics. So debt is an obligation that you have to pay at the end of the day. You can't walk away from it. Whereas when you're holding equity, you are the residual holder in the entity. So if things aren't going so great, you don't pay a dividend that year. Whereas with debt, you can't get away with it, you have to make the payment. So from anyone analysing a company or looking at them, they're really going to want to see that distinction between what is in the debt area and what is in the equity holder area. And it drives the other areas. So anything that's in debt will end up being interest expense, even if you can't work it out at the beginning of the year. So if I use an example, some pump companies have loans where they'd say, if we make a profit of X, we pay out Y. And you'd say, well, that sounds a bit more like equity. But actually, if you make the profit of X, you have to pay the Y. So that is actually, under the accounting standards, fitting into debt because you can't walk away from that obligation. Whereas if you've got equity and you're deciding about dividends, you could say, look, we did make a good profit this year, but cash is a bit tight. So it would be in the best interest of all of our shareholders to hold off and pay that dividend a bit later, a bit smaller, and directors can make that choice. So it really does point to solvency of the entity. And analysts really want to understand that maturity profile as well. When will the debt be paid? Is it all due tomorrow? That's something you want to know. Or is it due a long way off? So all of those pieces of information tell you about how the company is performing and what it's got in its back pocket to really help it perform well in the future. So I do think that the distinction between debt and equity is quite important. It tells you a lot about how the companies will be able to perform in the future.